You go to the pitch on a Saturday. You lace up whatever shoes you have. You grab a ball that's perfectly round, properly inflated, and you play with your friends. Or you sit in the stands or on the couch watching professionals do it with VAR, sponsorships, and 90 minutes on the clock. Simple. Honestly, kind of addictive. Now imagine doing all of that, minus the boots, minus the round ball, minus the marked pitch, minus the goals, minus the referee, minus literally everything. And instead you're standing in a dusty clearing or on a massive stone court with a heavy solid rubber ball or a stitched leather bladder stuffed with feathers, hitting it with your hips or kicking it toward a small net or hoop, while the stakes might involve the harvest, the gods' favor, or simply whether your group eats well tonight. That was playing football for our ancestors. And here's the thing nobody really asks. What did they actually do playing football? Like when the game began, when the ball was in motion, when competition and cooperation collided, and your only tools were your body and a shared understanding that this side and that side mattered. What was the plan? Did they just mess around? Did they play with deadly seriousness? Did they treat it like a ritual, like a prehistoric version of the Champions League final crossed with a religious festival? Because we spend so much of our lives around football now, and we rarely stop to think about how radically different that experience was for most of human history. The answer, as it turns out, is so much weirder, so much more fascinating, and honestly so much more human than you'd ever expect. Let's go back, way back, before we had standardized balls, before we had purpose-built courts, before we had anything resembling organized sport. Early humans were dealing with a very simple and very joyful problem. How do you take something roughly round and turn moving it with your body into something that binds a group together? Not the floodlit stadium with perfect grass, the open field, the village square, or the ceremonial stone court, the kind where every touch or pass could mean victory, laughter, or something much deeper. And in those games, things mattered. In some places, it was training and fun. In others, especially Mesoamerica, it was cosmology in motion. So what did you do? You grouped up. You made sides. You used the landscape itself as your stadium. In Mesoamerica, they built monumental stone ball courts, some as long as a modern football pitch, with sloped walls and stone hoops set high up. You knew exactly where the boundaries were. You could put your back to the wall. It was basically the first great sports architecture, and it was remarkably effective at turning play into something communal and lasting. Groups played together in these spaces, close enough to shout instructions, close enough to feel every collective groan or roar when the ball flew wild. It wasn't cozy, but there was a particular kind of safety and belonging in shared physical effort that went far beyond exercise. And then, somewhere between 600 and 2,300 years ago, depending on where you were on the planet, everything changed with better balls. The moment early humans gained reliable ways to make a ball that actually bounced, flew, or held its shape, leather-stitched and stuffed with hair or feathers in China and Eurasia, or solid rubber processed from tree latex in Mesoamerica, the entire dynamic of play shifted. A good ball does something almost magical from a social perspective. It creates focus. It lets the game flow for longer. It becomes a shared object of attention, a circle of play that is purely psychological and yet completely real. Most people won't organize serious matches without something decent to play with. Not because the object physically stops them, but because a proper ball makes the chaos into something worth repeating, worth arguing about, worth remembering. Sitting around after a match or during festival games, you weren't just recovering. You were becoming something more together. But here's what's genuinely interesting, the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Football didn't just give ancient humans a way to compete or stay fit. It fundamentally transformed what human beings could do in groups. Think about what happens around a ball game. You can't really be productive in the modern desk sense. What you can do is read each other's movements, anticipate, communicate without words, celebrate together, or carry collective disappointment. Researchers looking at traditional games across cultures notice something consistent. Casual daytime kicking around is often practical, training kids, staying sharp. But during proper matches or festival games, something deeper happens. The play itself becomes storytelling. Values of courage, generosity, cleverness, and loyalty get acted out in real time. In Mesoamerica, the ball game was tied to creation myths, the hero twins in the Popol Vuh. In China, Cuju was both military training and popular entertainment with spectators and structure. In Greece and Rome, versions like Episkiros and Harpastum built the skills soldiers needed while creating camaraderie that carried off the field. Roughly the same way fire turned night into culture, a good ball and a shared game turned scattered groups into teams with memory, strategy, and identity. This matters more than it might seem because games are how culture transmits itself without books. Games are how coordination, trust, and we get practiced and passed down across generations. The ball court or the village pitch was the campfire. The players and the crowd were the storytellers. Football may have been one of the single most important catalysts for teamwork, strategic thinking, ritual, and complex social bonding in many ancient societies. Now, about during the game, because this is where it gets genuinely strange, and this might actually change how you feel about a long, flowing match with natural pauses. Most of us assume the natural, normal way to play football is two fixed halves with a short break, or 90 minutes straight. If a game feels different, longer, more fluid, with ritual moments, we think something's off. But for most of history, games had their own rhythms. In Mesoamerican ballgame, it was often continuous. High stakes flow until a goal or the end of light. In Cuju, there were more structured periods and clear goals. In many folk versions across the world, play ebbed and flowed with the energy of the group, with natural breaks to drink, argue a call, or just exist together. This isn't speculation. Art, archaeology, and later texts show games with phases, intense bursts and moments of reset. What did people do in those windows? Everything. They performed small rituals. They tended the pitch. They discussed what just happened. Mothers or elders watched and commented. Young players learned by watching the older ones. In some ritual contexts, the space between action carried real weight. It wasn't injury time or VAR reviews. It was the game doing what physical contests have always done, existing in phases the way bodies and groups actually work. The reason this variety got compressed into our modern standardized clock is almost certainly codification, leagues, television, and global rules. Once everyone agrees on one format, the older, more local rhythms start to feel wrong. And suddenly a long, flowing kickabout without a referee or a strict timer feels like something's missing rather than something ancient expressing itself exactly as intended. So if you've ever played a casual game that went on for hours with natural pauses, felt completely in flow and strangely clear-headed, lying on the grass afterward just existing with the people around you, congratulations, you're not wasting time, you're not being unserious. You are, in the most literal sense, prehistoric. Your body and your group remembered something they were never supposed to forget. Let's go even further back. Early humans didn't have FIFA-approved equipment, but they also didn't just grab any rock and hope for the best. Archaeological evidence shows deliberate ball making as far back as 3,600 years ago. Leather balls stuffed with hair in northwest China, solid rubber balls in Mesoamerica that still smelled of latex when excavated. And here's the detail that lands hard. In Mesoamerica, they figured out how to turn sticky tree sap into a bouncy, durable solid ball through mixing with other plant juices. Material science achieved thousands of years before anyone knew what chemistry was. Someone got tired of a bad ball, experimented, tested, confirmed it worked better, and taught the method. That is science. That is innovation applied to play. These weren't people barely surviving the game. These were people engineering their fun and their rituals, iterating on solutions, making life measurably better through observation and creativity. In colder climates or different environments, the materials changed. Animal bladders, stuffed leather, but the impulse stayed the same. Certain people were natural playmakers or tireless defenders. Variation in skill and temperament within a group made better teams. Evolution is efficient like that. Now here's the part that really puts it in perspective. For virtually every ancient culture that played ball games seriously, the game carried extra charge. Maya ball courts were aligned with celestial movements. The game could symbolize the battle between cosmic forces. In some contexts, it was tied to offerings and, in the most intense ritual versions, profound consequences. Chinese Cuju served military training, but also became popular culture with fans and structure. Greek, exactly the fitness and unit cohesion armies needed. Polynesian and other societies had their own kicking or hitting games that strengthened community bonds. They were using play the same way they used fire or the night sky as infrastructure for being human together. So let's bring all of this together. When we ask what ancient humans did playing football, we tend to picture something crude and chaotic. People aimlessly kicking a bladder around, enduring the game rather than inhabiting it. Play as the gap between real work, the time when nothing important happened. But that's exactly backwards. The game was when humans tested limits, built trust, told stories through movement, held each other to standards of honor and cleverness. When they engineered better equipment and built the first stadiums. When they turned competition into something that could carry meaning beyond the final score. When the ball became a focus for identity, strategy, and memory across generations. The pitch or the ball court was not empty. The game was full. It was a different world governed by different rules, requiring different skills, physical, mental, sometimes spiritual, yielding different kinds of meaning. But it was a world that human beings had mapped, mastered, and made their own over thousands of years. And we traded some of that local depth and ritual richness for the beautiful global standardized game billions of us love today, which, to be clear, was absolutely worth it. Running water, antibiotics, the internet, and being able to watch the best players on Earth from anywhere are real advantages. But there's something genuinely lost in how thoroughly we've professionalized and commercialized play. How little most of us now know about creating our own games with whatever's at hand, or the natural rhythms of group exertion when left to their own devices, the dusty clearing, the shared breath after a long rally, the arguments and the laughter, the clear-headed focus when everything clicks. The feeling that this moment, this ball, these people matter right now. So next time you're playing a casual game that goes on longer than it should, or you're watching a match and feel that ancient electricity in your chest, don't reach for your phone the whole time. Don't overanalyze every decision. Just be there for a little while. Play or watch the way your ancestors played and watched, with your body, with the group completely in the game that has always been yours. You're not just following a modern sport. You're remembering,